Hey everybody, it's Adam Tracy, and I want to talk about the difference between a PayFac or payment facilitator and an ISO, independent sales organization, because there seems to be some ambiguity, and like if you Google it, it's even more ambiguous. So on the bottom end, you have ISOs, right? And as the name would imply, it's effectively a sales organization, right? They are partnering with the acquiring bank, a payment facilitator, EMI, wherever you are, and basically selling the service, right? And it's very easy to become like an affiliate of a payment processor, right? Like you just go to any of them, and typically, like what they do is they get a cut, right, of the volume that runs through. From a regulatory standpoint, there really isn't any obligations, right? Like, you know, just outside of general, know your customer type stuff, which would apply to any business, there isn't any enhanced obligations because an ISO doesn't handle any money, right? It's just a broker, basically. Now, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, like if you want to be an ISO, you actually have to go through an application process with them, right, to be sort of a registered ISO. And there's tons that aren't, right? And I don't think they police it very well, or even maybe not even try to. But at the end of the day, technically, you're supposed to register with Visa, MasterCard, etc. if you're going to sell card acquisition under their banner. So that's the ISO, right? Now the payment facilitator is a little different breed. One, because it requires licensing, right? Outside of states that have agent of pay exemption, or then in EU and other places, you'll need a payments license. But EU, obviously, one license can passport, throughout the EU. But the payment facilitator, has to be a member of the card network, right? So Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And their primary function is to handle settlements for merchants, right? And that involves obviously obtaining the information and the amounts and holding the amounts, and then taking out interchange fees and then pushing it back to the merchant. So, and the PayFac can market itself directly. Like, a lot of it comes through ISOs, but there's no reason, it doesn't have to be that way. So they can sign up merchants directly, if they're inclined to do it. And they can also rely on ISOs to bring them clients. But it's significantly more involved being a PayFac than an ISO. And if you're working with the PayFac, sometimes you will find that you'll get a slightly better rate, only because sometimes if it comes through an ISO, they'll put some percentages on top so they can pay the ISO. So, if you can go to the source, sometimes it's better. Obviously, ISOs tend to work with different PayFacs and processors, so it can give you a better array, I guess, of options. But at the end of the day, being an ISO is very easy, but the margins are very small, right? And it's really just a sales organization. So, whereas a payment facilitator, one, the investment's greater because you have to go through the card membership program that costs a little bit of money, and you need licenses, and it's involved, but your margins are quite high because you're taking like effectively the entire interchange fee. So that's sort of the difference. And whether you're coming from the perspective of let's start one, what do I do? And ISO is a good way to get into the industry, right? And like the cost to do so is actually very minimal, and kind of understand it. But the long term, in my mind, right, the long term play is obviously to become a PayFac, because it's a crowded space and amongst these ISOs, and at the end of the day, the PayFac, the margins are just huge. And if you like do something exotic like high risk or something like that, they become even greater. So that's my thought. But yeah, definitely hit me up. You have questions either as to finding a processor or ISO to work through, or if you're looking to start your own, definitely touch base and we can go through it. Adam at adamtracy.io. Talk to you next time. Cheers.